Okay, so here it is, guys, the final video of sculpting the Indominus Rex inside of ZBrush. For those of you who have stuck with me throughout this entire video series, I really appreciate you guys doing that. If you're just discovering this video series now, I will annotate the other videos in this series right over here. So in this video, I'm going to use a ZSphere to create a tree trunk, as well as using fibermesh to create branches and leaves, and then take all the elements, composite them together in Photoshop. Thanks for sticking with me, guys. Enjoy the video. Okay, so I start by adding the base ZSphere in here, and I'm not really sure what type of tree I'm creating at the very beginning. I'm just kind of seeing what feels right. And I knew since I only created the upper body of the Indominus, I needed some strategically placed trees in order to hide the fact that the rest of the body wasn't there. So that'll definitely come into play later on with how I light the scene and everything like that to make sure that it's a little bit darker around the area of the trees. And so I go ahead and skin the ZSphere, and I just start using the clay buildup brush to add volume and some shape to this tree. I wanted it to look like basically a very like jungly type tree. I don't know the technical names of trees, so I was just looking up photo reference of trees that I liked for this particular scene, and I'm basically sculpting based on, you know, what type of trees that I was seeing for like trees that grow in the jungle. Here I'm using a bark alpha to add the rough texture of the bark on the trees. The great thing about doing trees, especially with Z-spheres, is that, you know, they're very chaotic looking inherently. So you could kind of go a little bit wild with them, just to have a little bit of fun. If you don't like what you do, you can go ahead and resculpt. Trying to find the right color for it, and where the main color of this comes from is the cavity mask that I put on it, and you can see that it adds a nice bit of color variation. So duplicating the tree to add a little bit of depth into the midground, because I have an idea of where I'm going to go with it for the final composite. Now here I'm using fibermesh to add branches, and even though fibermesh is great, it simplifies the process. It's not a one-button press solution. You have to go through and decide what's looking right, what's looking wrong, and everything like that. But you can get some really fantastic results with fibermesh, as you can see right there. And since I knew that these trees were going to be primarily blurred, I didn't have to go crazy with the detailing of the branches. Doing the same thing on the other side. And now I'm using a fibermesh on top of a fibermesh to create the leaves, which I'm going to apply an actual leaf texture to. Another great thing about fibermesh is you can apply textures to the individual fibers, which is what I'm doing here to create the individual leaves along the branches. Really came up with some interesting results. And here I'm just actually kind of playing around to see what the different curves can do inside the length variations. So I didn't want everything to look perfectly uniform. And I'm pretty satisfied with the result that's giving me, so that's what I end up keeping. Now I'm going through and I'm adding the render passes by changing up the materials and rendering out each one of those different material variations so I can composite them together within Photoshop and use various blending modes to make the materials interact with one another. Doing the same thing for the individual trees, so I can have individual control over each element, the Indominus layer, the trees layer. I actually have each tree on its own individual layer, since I have one in front of the Indominus and one behind the Indominus. Now I'm going through and decolorizing the entire scene so I can get just pure lighting information. I render a couple different light sources here, and it allows you to vary the strength of each individual light source when you render it separately from the flat shaders and materials. I mean, shaders and materials is the same thing. Shaders and textures, what I meant to say. And there I went through and I added a light cap, which is basically using an image to light the scene, which is the final process of what I put on. Now here you can see me actually going through and blending all these layers together to get a really customized look that looks really nice. And going through and adding the trees layer, using the mask that I took out, that's that plain white that you saw that I'm using as a mask, so I can cut out the various parts to put the Indominus in front of the branches instead of the branches in front of the Indominus. Going through and I added the light cap to have the environment kind of drive somewhat of the lighting in the scene. And I'm going through and I'm kind of determining how each element should be blurred in order to make the elements kind of interact with each other properly. Because if you just stick it all together, everything ends up looking superimposed. So you have to do things like grain match. So I use noise filters in Photoshop to kind of add kind of like an idea of film grain to the overall composition. Because when you render out of ZBrush, there's no inherent grain in the model, so I have to actually add that, and that grounds it in reality. I'm using a gradient on a separate layer to darken the area where the trees are, and that really helps kind of ground the Indominus into the scene. You can see that it's dark in between the trees, kind of like an absence of light in that particular area. I'm adding a slight bit of motion blur to a few areas like the lower jaw and the hands and claw to really kind of add the idea that when this image was captured, the animal was in motion. Doing some minor color correction to the image to make everything kind of more integrated with one another. And there you see I was adding a vignette to darken the edges of the photo to bring the attention more closer to the subject matter. And here I'm just using an image of some jungle ferns to place at the bottom to put something directly into the foreground. Adding some reflection into the eyeball there. Can't neglect the eye in this instance because you definitely need something to make that pop a little bit. And we're nearing the final stage where I'm about to call this image complete, guys. This has been a really, really fun model to create, really fun composition to make. And here you see the final image that I decided that I liked. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video series. And stay tuned to the channel, guys. Make sure you subscribe because I'm going to have many more of these to come in the near future and many other types of videos as well. I hope you enjoyed this entire process, guys. Thanks for sticking with me. My name is Kurt Robinson, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.